Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics Football. It's Fran here, and I'm back with the Gameweek 9 review. So of course it was a fantastic week this week, and the points haven't fully updated so far. I think I'm expected to get 112 points due to the bonus points from Trent and Salah, and then also the Saint Maximin points coming off of my bench. So all in all, it was a fantastic week. So I'll just show you kind of my live FPL score. I should be ranked 2519, I think, at the end of this week. And honestly, all I can say is that it's been a fantastic week, and I'm really happy with, how things paid off. Now, of course, as you'll notice, I have Rafinha on my team. That was a bit of an issue, and of course, you can tell that I actually moved out of Rafinha, out of Jota actually to go into Rafinha, and that, of course, is a little bit dismaying. But I think, when I look back with hindsight, I don't really have any issues with that decision. I thought, Rafinha had a relatively good game versus Wolves, anyways, before the injury, and honestly, I wasn't expecting such a big collapse at Old Trafford. Of course, Liverpool, we know, are capable of dismantling top teams, but I don't think that was the expectation. I think the Salah captaincy, of course, hauled a lot more than I thought it would, and I'm really happy with the Foden haul. But this was this week. I think it's actually best to just go into the plans ahead. But just before I do that, actually, I'd like to shout out OneFootball. We've been working with them for several videos now, and as you guys know, OneFootball are one of those kind of football apps that I think is actually the best on the platform for iPhone and Android users. You can get access to kind of leagues, updates in terms of matches, in terms of who's scoring, who's assisting, who's maybe in line for a suspension, what kind of live updates as well in terms of VAR. You'll also get updates in terms of press conferences and the latest news in football, and you can kind of tell your kind of interest feed to make sure it matches whatever the app shows you. So whether you're following specific players, news about specific players that are in your FPL team, or players you'd like to pick up in the future, you can get up-to-date news on them. Whether it's injury news, how they're performing on specific games, let's say abroad in terms of international games, and so on and so forth. So please check out the app in the description below. But if I actually just go back to, let's say, kind of my Game Week 9 review, I think just going forward, as you can see my team, as it stands at Game Week 9, of course, I have the issue with the Rafinha injury. And I think the best way to move around this injury is simply by looking at, let's say, who everyone is facing next week in terms of my team, right? I think Watford, when we look at, let's say, Livermento, Watford have actually been very capable, I think, of scoring goals, with exception to when they were facing Liverpool. And that is a little bit of fear of putting Livermento in, but I still think I have the confidence in playing Livermento, maybe off the bench, right? Let's say if Rafinha is not able to actually play versus Norwich and actually return back in time for that game, because I think I would like to keep Rafinha ideally as a bit of a medium to long term pick. I also think that we're actually really running out of midfield options. With maybe, let's say, a move out of Benrahma on the cards, I don't really see any kind of ways to really change my midfield, and I don't really want to move out of Rafinha just right now. I just don't think there are some capable replacements. I've also been kind of upset about Mbeumo and his performance in terms of versus Leicester, how easily he was substituted off, which also tells me that he's not necessarily super nailed, right? Even though his expected goal numbers are fantastic. So that is a little bit of a worry there in terms of transfers. So when I'm picking my team for next week, I'd love to have Rudiger, I'd love to have Christensen. I do actually think that Christensen will be playing this game. I don't think he'll be rested 2 games in a row, when it comes to kind of big games, whether it's Champions League games or Premier League games, I think in terms of Trent, obviously I'm going to love having him in my team. Antonio for sure. Even maybe keeping Benrahma, if I have to take a point hit, might be reasonable if I really can't think about like a suitable way forward or out of Benrahma at this point in time. I think the player who I'd actually like to take out of my team the most right now is going to be Alan St. Maximin. Maybe I'll have to just take the price hit in terms of Benrahma, hope that he actually has a good hold versus Aston Villa, and kind of move on from there. In terms of Rafinha, as I say, the player that comes on for Cody has to kind of come into my team and probably deliver. I think there could be capacity to move let's say into a Wolves forward, or just Tony, to be honest, who I think is a little bit more nailed than Mbeumo, even though his numbers aren't that interesting. Interesting, though, actually, I think Tony actually has very, very good expected assist numbers, so maybe there could be a capacity for me just to go into Tony this week. However, what I also think is super interesting that I actually have the capacity to do as well, is to go into Mason Mount this week. The one thing I'm actually worried about is going to be injuries and things like that, so I'm not sure if I want to make this transfer tonight just to save that kind of 0.1 from Benrahma. But that is my current plan so far. And of course, in the future, I'll be able to still get out of Ronaldo. Some of you guys might be staring at my team right now and just questioning, why do I still have Ronaldo in my team? And to be honest, that's a very good question that I don't have necessarily the best answer to. I just think that right now in terms of replacements, I'm not even that interested in someone like Kane or someone like Vardy. We just saw Vardy substitute off for 45. And as I mentioned with Kane last week, the trap is looking at players hauling versus a team like Newcastle and Norwich and thinking that they're good to go for the rest of the season. I'm not saying Kane is not a world-class player. We know he is. But, of course, we've seen kind of troubling pains, right, with Spurs this season with under Nuno. And I still think that there's cause to be kind of concerned from that kind of point of view, right? So that is my kind of main worry if, let's say, if I keep ASM, because I think ASM is definitely not going to hold versus Chelsea. Whereas I still think that with United, what I've seen at least from, if let's say Ole Gunnar Solskjaer actually keeps his job, is that usually the rebound after a really terrible performance is actually quite solid. And I imagine that Ronaldo will be there for that rebound and capable of getting a haul, even away at Tottenham. Maybe I'm actually being a little bit too maybe I guess sympathetic to Ronaldo in my team, but I just think that there's no other kind of nice option of getting out of Benrahma and also ASM and Ronaldo. I'm not going to take a -8 hit for that. I think in the future I might take another -4 hit in the future. Let's say if I want to get out of Christensen, for example, and maybe upgrade him to like a Man City defender maybe in the week after that. Because when we look at, let's say, Chelsea, of course, I still think Christensen has capacity to play versus Newcastle. So maybe I'm going to kind of like hold off on that. Whereas with Man City, arguably I can get Cancelo in the week where they play Everton, right? I don't necessarily have to play him in the week where he plays versus Man United and Old Trafford. And then with the Crystal Palace game, I'm going to miss that game for sure, which is going to be a big miss, I think, in terms of having Cancelo and not, or rather not having Cancelo on my team. But I probably have to make do that and kind of live with it. I'm also super worried about the midfield differentials in terms of premiums. So we just saw Fernandes, of course. I mean, he plays for the same team as Ronaldo. I don't really think he's a viable option. Mane, we've also seen, has the capacity to be benched, and KDB has the capacity to be rested, because I think Man City are actually able to fight on all fronts with KDB resting, a few key games in the season. It seems like still the priority is probably to make sure that they get out of the Champions League group, and it seems like KDB is kind of seen as someone who's pivotal for those sorts of games, and that's the main worry, in terms of getting out of Ronaldo. Do I go into Kane or Vardy? Not right now. It doesn't seem like a very, very kind of viable option. The ugly thing, of course, is I think maybe I can go into Kane, let's say, after the subsequent week, right? After Tottenham versus Man United, and maybe I can go for him there. But as I said, I think that the plans are definitely to go into or go out of Benrahma and go out of Saint-Maximin. So let me know what you guys think in terms of like what I should do in that kind of decision there. I'd love to actually see and hear maybe your guys' feedback on that, because of course, as we look at Kane, he still has a super fantastic run after the Man United game. I think arguably Everton should not be considered a red fixture, so I think Kane makes a lot of sense in the week after the Tottenham United game. Just looking at my team, actually, I think when I look at just looking at price changes rather, I think Salah having a price change is super nice, of course. Why I'd like to ever go out of Salah, I couldn't tell you myself. I probably would not. Smith Rowe going up is interesting. I just think that if we're talking about, let's say, replacements for Benrahma, I was actually at one point considering players like Smith Rowe and Mbeumo, but I just think that with Smith Rowe, the fixtures are worse, and then with Mbeumo, the fixtures are good, but I'm not really sure about him kind of pegging his position on the team and also being able to deliver in games where, let's say, I think Brentford have actually been an extremely good side this season. I just think that they haven't been overwhelming teams in terms of scoring goals, and that's the slight worry when they kind of face these more compact teams. I don't think they have the ability to kind of tear teams apart, 3-0, 4-0. Maybe they do, and maybe I'm wrong about that. But I think that's just the kind of concern with Mbeumo right now, and why I'm not really tempted to go with my original plan transfer of going for Benrahma to Mbeumo at this point in time. And when I look at the price decreases, of course, the only thing that's really hurting me here is Benrahma. No one else is really on the table in terms of a big price decrease that would really affect me, so I'm not really worried about that. And I also want to say, just in terms of looking towards the future, I actually thought that when I was reviewing all the games this week, I thought, Lamptey had a very, very interesting game. And for sure in the future, I think he could be someone that I could actually replace Cody with. I'm not really looking to replace Cody immediately now. I think, of course, we don't really want to be wasting kind of transfers on a defender. But definitely in a future wildcard, I can see myself going out of Cody to go for someone like Lamptey, and maybe changing my keeper at that point in time. But for now, I'm actually really happy with the other parts of my team. I'm really happy with the Foden pick that I made and kind of making that decision over Grealish, to be honest. I think it was the right call, especially after watching the Liverpool game. It just, it seemed a little bit nonsensical to not have the Foden in my team when he looked that interesting. And I think, over the course of the season, we've seen that clearly Man City and Liverpool and also Chelsea are the best teams in the league, with, United and other teams kind of being quite far off the mark compared to these teams. And so for that reason, I think it still makes a lot of sense to actually have players from those teams. My general philosophy, though, on Mount, which is why I'm worried about that kind of double transfer and taking a hit, is that he really just isn't an explosive player. And I know I'm saying this after he got a hat trick versus Norwich, but I just think that, sometimes some fixtures are kind of built for players to have an exceptional haul, but it's not really, it's a kind of fixtures versus form question. I think that, when I look back with the Havertz pick and why I didn't go for it, whereas a lot of the people in the community did, I just couldn't really fathom going for a player who was out of form at the time. Mount, of course, was in the same kind of mark, I would say, or kind of category, and a lot of people went for Havertz, I think. Whether it's mistaken, I think we'll find out over the next two fixtures. I think Havertz still makes a lot of sense just because the fixture is so good. But I'm finding it kind of hard right now to justify whether I should immediately go into Mount, just to chase those two next fixtures. But let me know what you guys think overall. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions, and I hope you guys had a wonderful game week. And I'll see you guys very shortly for the cheat sheet video and some other kind of videos that will be coming up this week in the pipeline. So have a wonderful week, guys.